Why hello there, Nice Tail here. I hope this video finds you well, and I'm bringing you a review today of this Jack Wolf Scuffle. This is the latest model from Jack Wolf. This is, along with their last collab model, the Tango, probably the furthest departure aesthetically and overall from what Jack Wolf typically does in modern, sort of traditional slip joints or modernized locking patterns of slip joints. But I will say that this is a good knife. Just unequivocally, this is a good knife. So we'll start off there because it's got a lot going on for it. 3.5 inches of blade. Oh, we're jumping in the specs. 3.5 inches of blade. About 8 inches overall, which gives that about 4.5 inches of handle. So pretty decent ratios there. Comparisons to our resident medium-sized knife, the Conspirator from Civivi and the Elementum, also from Civivi. Pretty good comparison knives. I think most people have a general idea what these things are at. And as you can see, the Conspirator is a tiny bit bigger, but it's basically entirely handle. Just the handle's a little bit longer on the Conspirator. They both have 3.5 inches of blade. So it's not a particularly... It's a full-size knife, which is also very different from Jack Wolf. In fact, I think this is... There might have been one other one that was like 3.5 inches, I think. But it's one of the largest knives Jack Wolf has done. Thickness compared to the Conspirator, it is thick. It is a thicker knife. So bear that in mind. It's not super tall. It's, in fact, I'd say shorter in every way than the Conspirator. But it is relatively thick for a knife. And well, let's see how thick it is with the calipers. 586 thousandths, 586, and it does taper a little bit. It stays at about the same width to about here, and then it starts tapering down. So the titanium's a little bit thinner. Blade stock thickness, that's 150 thousandths. That is the thickest I think blade stock Jack Wolf has ever done. And despite that, however, it still has the ultra deep hologram, which is deeper than ever, in fact, because of that thick blade stock. You can still get down to approximately 70 thousandths behind the edge, 0.07 of an inch, or 0.007 of an inch. Yeah. It is wicked thin. Wicked thin. Oh, and for our last comparison, 2 AA batteries for your grip length, as anybody can have 2 AA batteries. And fortunately, 2 AA batteries comes out to being very close to like 4 inches-ish. And you have 2 full AA batteries of grip. You're probably not going to struggle to find a plot space to grip on this knife. Hardware check, actually. Yeah, the pivot is T10, and the hardware here is T8 Torx. It's only one screw that you really have to mess with, and the pivot. I did have to take this knife apart. When it came with a bunch of junk in the... I'm saying a lot. It came with a bunch of junk in the pivot that really was messing with the action, and it was just kind of funky, so I did take it apart. As you can see, there is a little bit of wear on the screw. Now, this is supposed to be DLC coating. So I would have thought it would be a little bit harder to mess with DLC coating than that. But yeah, it hardly surprises me. Right? I mean, I'm taking a hard steel and grinding against it, basically. But there is a tiny bit of wear because of it. Do with that what you will. I mean, if you're going to take apart your knives, you're going to clean your knives, you're going to do anything, this knife might just need it out of the box. which is, I mean, unfortunate, but hardly the worst thing ever. Just be careful and have good tools, right? Weight, 3.39 ounces, so the blade to handle length ratio, I mean, not blade to handle, well, the blade to handle length ratio is good, and the blade to weight ratio is really good. This is a very light knife. It feels like it should be heavier, probably because it's so thick. Honestly, I don't know how they got it as light as they did, other than the fact that the titanium has thick inlays on it, so the titanium itself is thin, and then they also put some milling down inside there, if you can see that. But it's very light. And the balance point is actually a bit far back. Like I said, most of the... Actually, I'm surprised at how far back that is. Probably the full backspacer is what's doing that. I would have thought the balance point would have been a little further up, considering how thick the blade stock is, but no, it's back here. Not a big deal, mind you. It still feels really good in the hand, and it's still super light, but just something to be noted, I suppose. I believe we are done with the specs. And I'm thinking about adding timestamps to this, like specs, review, conclusion kind of thing, just to see if that makes a nicer video or something. If you can just skip through the specs, just let me know. I'll do something like this to let myself know that it is time to move out, end the timestamp, or switch into a different section of the timestamps. Alright. Finish with the specs. So, let's talk about this knife. Obviously, clip point blade. It is... I don't think it... Does it say it anywhere? It doesn't say it anywhere, I don't think. It's S90V, blade steel. I thought they usually put their blade steels on the... Oh, no, I guess not. I'm misremembering. Okay. I was just looking at the Tango there. It is S90V blade steel, clip point, super thin hollow grind, satin finish, kind of like a light hand satin horizontal and belt satin on the blade. I suppose I should also show the container it came in, because all Jack Wolf comes in that. It is a collab with Niche Designs, who chose the possum, I guess. And you get your usual sticker, pog, cloth. They don't do the slip anymore for a lot of their knives, that, as far as I know. Even some of the ones that are like more traditional designs, I mean, they definitely do it still with the slip joints, but this is not that, right? You've got a fuller, which can definitely be used for opening, and the other primary opening mechanism is this flipper tab. So dual opening methods both work very well, actually. Jimping, not like the ultimate form of jimping, but this jimping is done in a way that it works very well. It actually does provide traction, and it's very comfortable. This would be good jimping, even if it's not like the super tight wire jimping. I have no problem with this. As I already said, it comes down very thin. It does get a little bit thicker at the tip, not a whole lot, but yeah, it'll definitely cut. You can get good tip access, no problems with that. Jack Wolf logo there, Niche Design logo there. Plunge grind is amazing with the sharpening choil because of this big giant sharpening choil. Plunge grind ends up here. You can use this as a little bit of a choke-up position. I wouldn't feel necessarily comfortable going like full knuckle in there. I'm pretty close to that edge. But first knuckle? Yeah, I mean, a little past that. If you have like really thick fingers. But you can also sort of just roll up onto the flipper tab just a tiny bit. It's not super comfortable. Like, I'm not going to be doing this for all day, but you can do it and stay there and just get close if you need something for a quick little sort of, I don't know, precision, I guess. Whatever. Most of the time you're back here, which is good because you're fine, you're comfortable. It's very comfortable. The ergos are neutral. Despite this very tall pocket clip, it's extremely ergonomic, extremely comfortable in the hand. I was worried about this. I mean, you feel it because it's so tall, but it's really nice. It is reasonably knocked down. It is darn comfortable in the hand, honestly. And that's partially because of how soft and rounded. I mean, I would hope that the other variants, like there is a titanium, crystallized titanium inlaid variant. I would hope that just like this, the edges are nicely rounded and softened, so it's still comfortable. It's of course going to be easier to do on this Black Ice Kyanite that's on this particular version. There are micarta, full tie, frame lock, Kyanite, crystal tie. Was there a carbon fiber variant of this one? I'm not even sure. There were several to pick from. I don't know how many are around. I think they sold pretty well. And yeah, for pretty good reason. That's the dog, if you can hear that in the background. That would be a dog. Even though it doesn't sound like one, it is. So, yeah, you had some options. If you can still find some, probably, maybe, somewhere. As I already mentioned, the titanium is supposed to be full DLC. The hardware and, well, the pivot and the pocket clip are full DLC. The pocket clip, despite looking very chunky and kind of awkward, as it could probably come up a little bit further as a continuous rise, isn't bad. It doesn't have as much flex as I would think it would, but it isn't super tight. Like, it's easy to get up and out of the way. It's just it comes to a certain point when it starts getting really hard to move. So it's not bad. It works. It's not the greatest pocket clip, but it's not a bad pocket clip. It's fine. Super thick pants, yeah, you're always going to have an issue, let's be honest. This knife is on bearings, and once I actually got this thing cleaned out from inside and set up, as you can see, yeah, this is really good action. Like, really good action. It takes just barely, kind of, maybe a tiny bit of movement. Honestly, that might be because it's dried out a little bit in there, but I had this thing basically slow glide shut. Yeah. It's probably the best action I've ever felt on any Jack Wolf. It's really good. And unlike a lot of the previous ones, you barely feel the bearings moving. For whatever reason, with a little bit of nano oil in there, this one is a lot smoother than any of the others. Like, I can't feel the bearings. And it's a beautiful action. It's a good detent. It feels a little light, but it's perfectly fine. Like, it's adequate. It's definitely not flying out. And yeah, that. Pretty slow, just drop shot. I am extremely pleased with the action and the fit up, and it's got the stop pin attached to the blade. It is perfectly centered despite this super thin hollow grind, which is not always easy to do. In fact, is it still perfectly centered? It is. It looks a little off because of this light being a little bit, I think, more dramatic here. Oh no, it looks a tiny bit off because the very edge of the hollow grind, as you can see, is deeper on one side, deeper on this side than it is on this side, so it looks a little bit off. But like I tried to measure the dang thing, and it was pretty dead spot on with the calipers, by the way. It just looks a little bit because of that slight shift in the grind. Nice, kind of interesting. I think that's partially because of the garage stops that are attached to the blade that makes a slightly different sound when it opens up, which is pretty nice. It is not cut back really. I mean, is it cut back a tiny bit? Not really. Like most Jack Wolfs. Maybe, just a tiny bit. No, I don't think so. The lock bar is not really cut back or for access, or I should say the show side is not cut back for lock bar access. However, they've got a pretty big, pretty nice slant here going on, especially with this thicker titanium and thicker blade stock due to the fact that, or thicker gap due to the thicker blade stock is what I'm trying to say. You can definitely access it from the side. No problem whatsoever. In fact, lock bar access is probably, again, the best I've felt on any Jack Wolf knife. It does have a full backspacer, and it does have polished pivot collars. Now, that is one thing. I pointed this out in the unboxing, and I totally forgot to reach out to Jack Wolf, but my pivot collars came out of the box, like, scratched up. Like, what the heck? They are beat to heck, these pivot collars. And the backspacer is mostly okay, but there's a few scratches on that one too. I'm still going to reach out to them and see if they'll, like, send in a replacement or if I can get a replacement, because that's kind of bizarre on a knife that's come basically perfect like this. Why the polished spacers are, like, if they were going for like an ice look, that would be cool considering this is black ice, but that's definitely not on purpose. That's just weird. That shouldn't happen on a knife this expensive, but I don't know. I do think Jack Wolf will probably be fine and will, be willing to cover that. Also, as you can see, there's no lock bar insert on the outside, but there is one on the inside with a screw right there. So it is a lock bar insert. It's not titanium on steel. And then finally, the scales. I really like these black Kieranite. This resin stuff. Yeah, this one looks good. I was tempted at first when I saw the crystal ice, but I have a crystal tie Jack Wolf. So then I saw this and I'm like, yeah, no, that's actually pretty darn nice. The fit up from the scales, yeah, you can feel the seam. I don't necessarily think they were going for it because it feels like pretty consistent throughout. You can just feel it, this titanium being slightly higher, and it feels very consistent, so I'm not necessarily sure they were going for like a perfectly flush, but it's not technically. There is also, if you look up to the light, that I don't. This is extreme pickiness, but just to mention, there is a tiny bit of like gapping, kind of. On one side where there's a little bit more gap between the backspacer and the scales. It's super minor, and you can't see it, you can't tell it's there. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, just something that I noticed when I was putting it together, probably. Or I should say, when I put it back together. And I want to bring everything to everybody's attention. The final thing I have to bring to attention is this lock bar cutout. It is still a little bit sharp, but this is probably the least sharp of any Jack Wolf knife that I've come across. I've noticed, as I've looked over them, one of the big things with this one is the inlay and the lock bar cutout is a bit sharp on a lot of them, especially this one, which is kind of annoying considering how small it is. If you get in there and you're like, okay, I'm comfortable, and then you start to move around and you're like, oh, I can feel that. It's not necessarily uncomfortable, and it doesn't necessarily hurt it, but I'd kind of like that to be addressed. This one, yeah, doesn't have that issue. It's a little bit hard angle-y, but it's more knocked down and sharp and treated than any that I've encountered. That could be partially the DLC, let's admit that. But you also don't come in contact with it basically ever, so it's kind of not an issue here. And just so you know, the collars are not in over travel stop. The over travel stop is attached to the lock bar insert. It's down in there. So, also important to note is these inlays. That's the word I'm looking for. Are attached from the inside. They are held in by screws from the inside. You do have this, but this is not holding them on. It is holding the knife together, however. So you take these apart, and you can actually take it apart, and if you want to remove the inlays, they are from the internally. I think those are, if I remember, yeah, they're T6s. Never like seeing T6s, and especially when it's on the inside, why do you need to use T6s? But whatever. Companies seem to love them. I don't know. Overall, yeah, this is probably one of the best Jack Wolf knives they've actually ever done, in my opinion. It is $350. Very premium. Not out of the ballpark of the rest of them. It is par for the course. It is pretty much the same price that almost any other Jack Wolf is, and in my opinion, this one is doing the best for that money. And at $350, considering this is not only an OEM knife, but a collab knife, you get a little bit of extra stuff, and the execution and super thin hollow grind, premium materials. This is probably the one that justifies it the best. Like, I could have made an argument to say that this should have been about $325, probably maybe $320, $325, yeah. It's good, but the bearings don't run as smooth as you'd think for a knife this expensive. Yeah, this one does have S90V. It doesn't have it on this one. The bearings don't run as smooth. The lock bar cutouts, in my opinion, could be a little bit better. But this one is more the full premium experience. At least my particular example is. So, I like this. I can recommend this. This is a good knife. I definitely feel like I'm getting more than ever from Jack Wolf, and I can appreciate that. They've definitely stepped up their game, at least on this knife. So, yeah. The Scuffle. It's good. It's really good. It's kind of great. No problems here. And I will do an update if I get new hardware for this thing. I'll see what Jack Wolf says and sends me, or doesn't send me, or how they respond. Who knows? I'll let you guys know. I'm no one. I'm not going to tell them it's for a review. I'm just going to say, hey, I need this. Was like this. I can show you, give you pictures if you want, but it kind of came funky. That shouldn't happen at this price point. Everything else on this knife is really, really good, though. And I don't believe most variants have the full polished, so it probably won't even be a thing on most variants of this knife, which is nice. Other than that, yeah, this is an excellent knife, and it's a fun one. It's got a nice design. It's simple still, but yeah, I like the Scuffle. So I'm going to end things here. It went a little bit long. Consider liking and subscribing. Helps the channel. Leave some feedback and your thoughts. Yeah, and that's it. So I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.